10 acts, 10 moments when the music didn't just slow down, it collapsed. These were groups and artists with number one, sold out tours, the kind of sound that defined a generation. And then in the space of a few years, it was gone, not gradually, not softly, ruthlessly.
What can make me feel this way?
This is the most devastating career collapses in 70s R&B. You already know some of these names. You don't know the whole story.
Sometimes I'm right, and I can be wrong.
Number 10, The Fifth Dimension. Here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud about The Fifth Dimension. Their collapse wasn't caused by anything they did wrong. No scandal, no failed creative direction, no industry falling out. Their collapse happened because the two most essential people in the group quietly looked at each other and left. Marilyn McCoo and Billy Davis Jr. had been the heartbeat of the Fifth Dimension since the beginning. 6 Grammys, 20 top 40 hits. Aquarius Let the Sunshine In, holding the number one spot on the pop chart for 6 straight weeks in 1969. If you grew up in a household where good music was non-negotiable, at the cookouts, at the family gatherings, on the radio during Sunday drives, The Fifth Dimension was the soundtrack. And at the center of it always was that voice. Marilyn's voice and Billy's baritone anchoring every harmony they ever built together. In late 1975, they walked out. Married since 1969, they decided together there was more for them as a duo than there would ever be inside the group. They left graciously, no bitterness, no drama, just a quiet exit. And the 3 remaining members, Florence LaRue, Lamonton McLemore, Ron Townsend, talented, committed, genuinely gifted people who've been there from the start, tried to keep the group going. But the silence was immediate, because here's the problem. The Fifth Dimension was never just a group, it was a sound. And that sound was built around 2 specific voices. Without Marilyn and Billy, you had 3/5 of something that used to be whole. The new Fifth Dimension could fill a room. They just couldn't fill the space those 2 had left. New labels, new material, no hits. The audience that had loved them for a decade had no reason to stay. And then here's the part that still stings. Marilyn and Billy released their first single as a duo in 1976. You don't have to be a star to be in my show. Number 1, Poppin' R&B, a Grammy, a CBS TV variety show. While the group they walked away from was searching for a sound, the people who left were thriving. If you've ever been the one who stayed while the key player walked out the door, you know what that particular helplessness feels like. It's not betrayal. It's just the cold math of someone knowing their worth. The Fifth Dimension didn't break up. They got left behind. And in this business, there's barely a difference. Number 9, the Stylistics.
As she turned the corner, night corner.
There's a specific kind of collapse that happens. Someone else was always the genius behind the curtain, and you just didn't know it until they were gone.
Can I forget when each face that I see?
The Stylistics had 12 consecutive top 10 R&B hits. 12. From 1971 to 1974, every record they put out with Tom Bell was an event.
Everything is you. Oh, you are everything.
You Are Everything, Betcha by Golly Wow, Break Up to Make Up. You Make Me Feel Brand New. These weren't just hit records. They were songs people memorized. Songs songs that appeared at slow dances, at weddings, at the exact moment in someone's life when they first understood what it felt like to miss someone. If you know any of those songs and you know them, you know exactly what I mean. Tom Bell wasn't just their producer, he was their architecture. The lush strings, the layered harmonies. Russell Tompkins Jr.'s falsetto riding on top of arrangements so precise they felt inevitable. That was Bell's vision as much as anyone's. He built the Stylistics the way a master carpenter builds something that looks effortless until you try to replicate it yourself. And in 1974, he stopped working with them. The split involved a combination of shifting creative priorities and changing business relationships. The Stylistics moved on, brought in new producers Hugo and Luigi with arranger Van McCoy, and tried to adapt. And here's the thing, these weren't bad records. Some were genuinely solid, but they weren't those records. The US charts stopped responding almost immediately. Here's what got me when I started digging into this. The Stylistics didn't fall apart as people. They kept showing up, they kept touring, they kept recording. What collapsed wasn't the group, it was the invisible architecture that nobody outside the studio had ever even seen. The fans didn't know they were losing Tom Bell. They just knew the record stopped feeling the same way. And they moved on without ever understanding why. There's something about that kind of collapse that hits different. It's not a scandal. It's not a fight. It's just one person deciding to walk away and everything quietly unraveling behind them like a thread being pulled from a sweater. In the UK, the Stylistics stayed massive through the late 70s. Chart toppers, TV appearances, real sustained love. But back home in the US, the silence was near total. She won't like you do. 12 straight top 10 hits, and then nothing stateside. That's not bad luck. That's what happens when one person was quietly holding the whole thing up. Number 8, The Child Lights. I want you to think about Old Girl for a second. That opening. Try to be hip and think like the crowd. Eugene Records falsetto stepping up out of nowhere, reaching right through the radio, 1972. Number 1 on the pop chart. Number 1. And it did it on nothing but vulnerability, no bravado, no posturing. Just a man with his heart completely exposed, asking a woman not to leave him. The Child Lights out of Chicago had been grinding since the late 1950s. Years of local labels, name changes, near misses. By the time Have You Seen Her hit in 1971, they'd been building toward this for over a decade. And Eugene Record wasn't just their lead singer. He wrote the songs. He produced them. He was the vision and the voice simultaneously. The Child Lights were a group, but they were also quietly Eugene Record's instrument. By the mid-70s, their label, Brunswick Records, was collapsing under tax problems and legal trouble. In 1970, the group members themselves had to plead guilty to tax evasion charges to put the legal proceedings to rest. How I depend on you to give me love. And in that same year, with the infrastructure crumbling around them, Eugene made his decision. He was going solo. Warner Bros. Was offering a deal. He took it. Now here's where the collapse gets genuinely cruel. Eugene Record released 3 albums on Warner Brothers. None of them charted in any meaningful way in the US. All that genius, the same genius that wrote Old Girl and Have You Seen Her, didn't transfer. Not because the music was bad, it wasn't, but the child lights were a context. Eugene needed a group the way a soloist sometimes needs an orchestra. The intimacy of his voice worked inside that structure. Alone, somehow, the magic didn't translate. And meanwhile, the child lights without Eugene, without the voice, the pen, the producer, they signed to Mercury in 1977 and couldn't generate a charting hit. Both collapsed simultaneously. The Man and the Machine he spent 15 years building, and if you've ever watched something fall apart in two directions at once, the thing you left and the thing you thought you were going to build, you know that's a specific kind of pain. It doesn't feel like freedom. It just feels like lost traveling in stereo. Number 7, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes.
You don't know me by
If You Don't Know Me By Now, 1972. Top 5 pop, number 1 R&B.
that we've been through.
If you know that song and you know it, you know that voice, that deep, searching, desperate baritone, that's Teddy Pendergrass. And here's what a lot of people forget.
Don't get so excited.
Teddy Pendergrass didn't start as the lead singer. He was the drummer. Harold Melvin was the one who noticed him, saw something in the young percussionist when the group was on tour together in 1970.
Don't know me by
Moved him up front, handed him the microphone, and in doing so, Harold Melvin built the very thing that would eventually bury him. Because by 1975, something had shifted in the crowd.
long as we've been together.
Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes were soul royalty. The Love I Lost, Wake Up Everybody, back-to-back R&B number ones. But when people came to the shows, they weren't looking for Harold. They were there for Teddy.
By now,
Fans were walking up to the lead singer after performances saying, "Great show, Harold." Teddy would have to correct them. "I'm not Harold. That's Harold over there." And people would look confused. That confusion told the whole story. Teddy wanted separate billing. Harold said no. And so in 1976, Teddy left. Gamble and Huff, the Architects of Philadelphia Soul, were waiting with a solo deal. The only condition? Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes couldn't stay on Philadelphia International. Harold, the man who found Teddy, gave him the stage, built the career from nothing, was effectively pushed out of the label that had made them both famous. Teddy wouldn't sign unless Harold was gone. And what happened next?
I've got mine.
Teddy Pendergrass became one of the dominant R&B artists of the late 70s almost immediately. Solo albums charting instantly. Sold out tours with women screaming in the front rows. The kind of fame that feels like inevitability when you look back on it. Harold Melvin moved to ABC Records, brought in a new lead singer, and watched his chart positions decline with each release. The first album without Teddy barely cracked the top 15 on the R&B chart.
Between right and wrong,
You can say Teddy was right to go. You can say Harold was too proud to share the spotlight. Both things are probably true. But the real story is this.
just trust in me, oh baby.
Harold Melvin made Teddy Pendergrass, and Teddy Pendergrass's success became the most painful ongoing reminder of everything Harold had given away. Number 6, The Miracles.
Subject, don't let my glad expression
When Smokey Robinson announced he was leaving the Miracles in 1971, the music world's reaction was clear. These are done.
The tears of a clown when there's no.
Smokey was the Miracles the way the Mississippi is the Delta. He'd written hundreds of songs, built their sound from scratch, shaped their entire identity over 15 years.
The tears of a clown when there's no.
His falsetto was one of the most recognizable voices in American music. When he said he was stepping back, a lot of people said what they assumed was the obvious thing. The Miracles are finished. The group brought in a young singer named Billy Griffin as their new lead voice. They kept recording, but the records weren't connecting. The audience that had loved them for Shop Around and the Tears of a Clown had moved on. You couldn't blame them. You can't replace Smokey Robinson. That's not a slight. It's just physics. And then Love Machine happened. 1975, Love Machine Part 1. Without Smokey, without the Motown infrastructure they'd known for a decade, the Miracles, this group that everyone had mentally buried, released a song that climbed all the way to #1 on the pop chart in February 1976. #1.
Oh yeah, baby.
The group, written off with the lead singer nobody had heard of 2 years before, reached the very top. You know how that feels if you've ever watched something come back from where everyone said it couldn't come back from. That specific relief, that vindication. But here's what made this collapse so ruthless. By 1977, Billy Griffin was gone. A solo deal called him away. And without him, the group that had defied all expectations just a year and a half earlier, the group that had pulled off one of the most unlikely chart runs of the decade, was done. No more comebacks, no more Miracles. The name eventually became an oldies tour rotation, and that was that. Some of y'all just felt that. You know what it's like when the comeback actually works, when you get all the way back to the top, and it still doesn't hold.
The tears of a clown when there's no.
That's not just bad luck. That's the industry reminding you that nothing is permanent. Not even the second chance you bled for. #5, Donny Hathaway.
How much fun it's gonna be together.
Quincy Jones once said Donny Hathaway was the most talented musician he had ever encountered in his life. That's not a throwaway compliment from a man being gracious.
This Christmas, and as I look.
That's Quincy Jones, who had worked with Miles Davis, Frank Sinatra, and Michael Jackson, saying one specific person was the most talented he'd ever met. And if you've heard This Christmas Fill a Room with Warmth, or if the ghetto ever hit you in a way that was hard to explain, that's Donny.
Will be a very special Christmas.
A pianist, arranger, composer, and singer of almost supernatural ability who could hear the architecture of a song before he played a note. He signed to Atlantic in 1969. Rolling Stone called him, after his very first single, a major new force in soul music.
I'm gonna get to know you better.
His duet with Roberta Flack, Where Is the Love?, won the Grammy for Best Pop Performance by a Duo in 1973. And then, running underneath everything, the paranoid schizophrenia had begun. Donny was diagnosed and hospitalized multiple times throughout the 70s. He was taking up to 14 pills a day to hold himself together. The illness created delusions, persecution, voices, the belief that people were trying to kill him. His friendship and creative partnership with Roberta Flack collapsed under the weight of his erratic behavior. 1973, he walked out of a recording session hearing things nobody else could hear. For years after that, they didn't speak. The music went quiet. Here's what's still in 1978, Donny came back. He and Roberta reconciled. The Closer I Get to You went to number 2, a Grammy nomination. He was in the studio again. People who knew him said there were periods of clarity where the old Donny was fully present, fully brilliant, fully there. On January 13, 1979, he was sent home early from a recording session at the Essex House Hotel in New York after a paranoid episode during the session. He returned to his room on the 15th floor. A few hours later, he was found on the sidewalk below. He was 33 years, no scandal, no drug problem, no industry betrayal, just the most gifted soul musician of his generation, destroyed from the inside by an illness that the people around him. And the industry that wanted to keep extracting music from him never adequately helped him fight. Number 4, The Temptations. By the time the 1970s started, the Temptations had already lived through a dozen lifetimes. David Ruffin fired in 1968 after his ego finally outgrew the room. Eddie Kendricks leaving in 1971 to go solo. And then Paul Williams, the co-founder, the choreographer, the man whose visual identity had shaped everything the Temptations ever were on stage, forced out on medical advice after a doctor found what years of drinking had done to his liver. Paul Williams had been hiding his illness for years. Sickle cell anemia, chronic pain, and a touring schedule that never stopped. The drinking that everyone could see was covering the pain that almost nobody knew about. By the time he left in 1971, the other Temptations had been keeping an oxygen tank backstage just in case. They'd hired a substitute, Richard Street, to sing Paul's parts from behind a curtain while Paul stood on a stage with a microphone that had been quietly turned off. He was still out there, still trying, just not actually performing anymore. Stay with me on this one. When Paul Williams formally left the Temptations, they kept paying him his full equal share of the touring and recording revenue. A man who physically could no longer perform, still receiving his check because the people he built something with couldn't bring themselves to cut him off. On August 17, 1973, Paul Williams was found in a car near 14th and West Grand Boulevard in Detroit, not far from the Hitsfield building where he spent the defining years of his life with a gunshot wound to the head. He was 34 years old. His family has questioned the official ruling ever since. And the Temptations themselves, they continued through the 70s. New members, a string of Motown releases, occasional chart entries. But this was not the group that had defined an era. Norman Whitfield's psychedelic soul productions were divisive. The revolving door of members kept turning. Every few years, another name came and went. You know that feeling when something has technically kept going, but you know it ended years ago? You're just watching the after image. That's what the Temptations were for most of the 70s. Technically there, actually already gone. Number 3, Isaac Hayes. January 1972, the Academy Awards. For the first time in history, a black composer walked to that stage and took home the Oscar for Best Original Score. Isaac Hayes, theme from Shaft. And when that bass line played in the theater that night, the whole architecture of what black music was allowed to be on the world's biggest stages shifted.
Who's the cat that won't cop out when there's danger?
Think about what Isaac Hayes was in those years. A staff songwriter at Stax who'd helped write Saw Man and Hold On I'm Coming for Sam and Dave while working behind the scenes. A solo artist who'd been told after his debut flopped in 1968 that maybe he should stay behind the board. Who then made Hot Buttered Soul, an album built around massive, slow-burning arrangements and spoken word passages that ran 8 and 18 minutes and essentially invented the template that Barry White and dozens of others would spend the next decade building from. Then the Grammy, then the Oscar, then the sold-out arenas. Isaac Hayes was one of the wealthiest black entertainers in America. And then Stax Records collapsed.
No one understands him but his woman. John Jack.
December 19, 1975. Federal marshals arrived at Stax headquarters in Memphis and seized the building, seized the master tapes, seized everything. The label, which had been run into the ground after a disastrous distribution deal with CBS Records, was done. And because Isaac Hayes' finances were bound to that label in ways that went far deeper than a recording contract, Stax took him with it. By 1976, Isaac Hayes was in personal bankruptcy. Over $6 million in debt, he lost his home. He lost his cars, including a gold-plated Cadillac that had become one of the most recognizable symbols of black excellence in the early 70s. And here's the part that cuts deepest. He lost the rights to the royalties from all the music he had written, performed, and produced. Every song, every future check, gone. 4 years. From the Oscar stage to personal bankruptcy in 4 years. And none of it was truly Isaac's fault. He didn't mismanage the label. He didn't negotiate the bad distribution deal. He was a creator swept away by a collapsing business that had made promises it couldn't keep. When it fell, it took everything with it. That's not just a career collapse. That's a system failing the people who built it. Number 2, Marvin Gaye. I want to tell you something about Here My Dear, December 1978, a double album. 71 minutes of music built entirely around the most painful, humiliating, and exposed period of Marvin Gaye's life, his divorce from Anna Gordy Gaye. Anna was the sister of Berry Gordy, which means the entire situation had about 3 layers of professional and personal complication built into it from the very beginning. Here's how this collapse started. Anna filed for divorce in November 1975. By September 1976, a warrant had been issued for Marvin's arrest for failing to pay alimony. His finances were already in chaos. He owes his former manager $2 million. He owed the IRS. His lawyer proposed a solution. Give Anna $600 from the advance and royalties of his next album. So Marvin went into the studio to record an album that was legally committed to paying his ex-wife. And instead of delivering something commercial and painless, he made the most nakedly honest record of his career. Every argument, every wound, every grievance from 13 years of marriage went directly onto the tape. He called songs Anger. When Did You Stop Loving Me? When Did I Stop Loving You? He opened the album by addressing Anna directly. Anna was furious. She threatened to sue him for $5 million over invasion of privacy, which would mean the album made to pay off a divorce settlement might end up costing him far more than the settlement itself.
All of those promises was nothing.
Commercially, Here, My Dear failed. Listeners didn't know what to do with it. Critics didn't know what to do with it. Some thought Marvin had genuinely lost his mind.
You say bad things and you lied.
He kind of had. After the album, he fled to Hawaii, then to a friend's boat, then to London. The IRS was pursuing him. His second marriage to Jenna Hunter was collapsing simultaneously.
I really tried.
By the end of the decade, Marvin Gaye was living in Austin, Belgium, voluntary exile, broke, and barely recording. And the cruelest footnote? Here, My Dear is now considered one of the greatest albums ever made. It sits on Rolling Stone's list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. The Collapse and Masterpiece were the exact same thing.
We really lied, didn't we, baby?
He reached his artistic peak at the moment of his total commercial and personal destruction.
Never be satisfied. No,
I'll let you decide what to do with that.
what to do? Make him pay for living you.
Number 1, Sly and the Family Stone. In August 1969, Sly Stone walked onto the stage at Woodstock, a mixed-race, mixed-gender band on a lineup full of rock acts. He opened with I Want to Take You Higher, and before the song was half over, 400,000 people were moving as one. Everyone who was there, and everyone who has watched the footage since, knows what that moment was. Revolution in real time. The most radical idea in American music made visible. That black and white and male and female could share the same stage, the same sounds, the same vision of what tomorrow looked like. Everyday People. Number 1, 1969. Thank You, Falatimi Be Mice Elf Agin. Number 1, 1970. The most important crossover act in America. A template that Prince would take and run with. That the Red Hot Chili Peppers would build on. That practically every post-1970 artist in the R&B rock funk space would use in some form. If there's a musician you love from the last 50 years who crossed genres and genders and races without apology, they were living in a world Sly Stone helped build. And by 1971, Sly Stone was alone in his Bel Air home studio, making There's a Riot Going On almost entirely by himself. Not the band, himself. Recording over existing tracks in isolation, surrounded by people who had no business being around him. The cocaine and PCP use that had been escalating since the peak years had now taken over completely. In 1970 alone, the Family Stone canceled 26 of their 80 scheduled concerts. A canceled Chicago show caused a literal riot between the crowd and police. The band was still technically together when they were doing that. Larry Graham, the man who invented slap bass, whose technique would define funk, hip-hop, and modern rhythm playing for the next 5 decades, left because Sly wouldn't show up. Other original members followed. By Fresh in 1973, the band that played those sessions was barely the Family Stone anymore. By Small Talk in 1974, even the commercial numbers were gone. Sly had effectively dismantled the most revolutionary band in the country from the inside out. Here's what separates this story from everything else on this list. Sly didn't just lose his career. He eventually lost his catalog. In 1983, desperate for cash, he sold the international publishing rights to his songs. The songs that defined a generation, to Michael Jackson's company, Majak Music, for what turned out to be a fraction of their actual worth. The man who wrote Everyday People eventually sold those words out of desperation. There were years spent living in a van, arrests, rehabilitation programs that didn't hold. An industry that had celebrated him at Woodstock had long since moved on and built on top of everything he planted. Sly Stone passed away on June 9, 2025. He was 82 years old, surrounded by family, and in the weeks after, the whole world remembered who he had been.
We got to live together.
But for those who've been watching the real story, the 70s story, the one nobody wants to hold up next to the Woodstock footage, the grief had started a long time before that.